I would like to call the January 8th, 2025 City Council regular meeting to order. Would everyone stand and please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Carey,
Present.
Chilson,
Present.
Hutchings, here. Nelson,
Present.
Parker,
Yes, I'm here.
Wackler. Present. Kincaid. Here. You have a quorum.
The next item on the agenda is the approval of the agenda and consent agenda. May I have a motion to approve the agenda and consent agenda? Mr. Carey,
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move the approval of the agenda and the consent agenda as it appears before us.
may I have a second, please? Thank you, Ms. Hutchings. Are there any changes to the agenda or consent agenda? Seeing and hearing none, would the clerk please read the consent agenda?
December 18th, 2024, council meeting minutes. Resolution 2025-001, commending the Soldotna High School girls wrestling team for winning the 2024 state championship title, sponsored by Vice Mayor Parker. Resolution 2025-002, reclassifying the utility manager position from a salary range 23 to a range 22 and amending the FY25 authorized staffing table, sponsored by the city manager. Resolution 2025-003, establishing the City of Soldotna legislative priorities, sponsored by the city manager. That is your consent agenda.
Are there any public comments on any of the items just read by the clerk? Anybody like to comment on anything that was on the consent agenda that was just read? Seeing none here in the audience, we'll take a look at Zoom and I see no hands raised there. Are there any council objections to approving the agenda and consent agenda? Seeing and hearing none, the agenda and consent agenda are approved. Next, we'll have Resolution 2025-001, commending Soldotna High School girl wrestling team and Vice Mayor Parker.
If the coach and the team beat me,
Is the microphone turned on?
There we go. So a resolution commending the Soldotna High School girls wrestling team for winning the 2024 state championship title. Whereas the Alaska School Activities Association, ASAA, held the 2024 State Division II Wrestling Tournament in Anchorage at the Alaska Airlines Center on December 21st, 2024. Whereas Soldotna High School Sohai girls wrestling team scored 169.5 points to win the title. And that's a future wrestler right there. And whereas they also set the record for the most points scored at the state since ASAA started girl team scoring in 2017. And whereas the Soldotna title was defended under the guidance of its head coach, Pete Dickinson, and assistants Max LeClaire, Pete Lick, Sade Castillo, thank you, and Rachel Nelson. And whereas in the 100-pound weight class, Sohai's Jessica LeClaire placed 5th and Naomi Keller placed 4th. In the 107-pound weight class, Valerie McNeil secured 2nd place. Chevelle Lamb participated. In the 114-pound weight class, Mia Hannibal achieved 1st place in the 126-pound class. Rowan Peck placed 2nd in the 140-pound weight class. Carissa Heitzman, thank you, participated in the Daisy Hannibal, placed 3rd in the 152-pound weight class. Bella Beard placed 4th in the 160-pound weight class, and Infinity Anna.
Asiata Higa.
Thank you. Placed second. And whereas Sohai Girls was the second state wrestling team title for Sohai and placed the second girls title on the peninsula. Now therefore be it resolved by the city of Soldotna, the city of Soldotna, the Soldotna City Council of the city of Soldotna, section 1, that the Soldotna City Council commends the Soldotna High School girls wrestling team for their outstanding performance in winning the 2024 Division II title championship. And section 2, this resolution shall become effective immediately upon its adoption. Adopted by the City Council on this 8th day of January, 2025, signed by Mayor Paul Whitney, City of Soldotna. Congratulations, ladies. Is there a you have a coach? Is there a captain for your team? No? Well, here, I will give to you because you're the closest, and then you can hand it to the coach. This is a copy of the resolution that the coach can get to all of you ladies.
I'll make copies and get it to
Congratulations to all of you.
Thank you.
Yes.
you. Lisa?
Here,
Yeah, there you
here.
go.
No, you can't go away yet. And I got on my so high blue.
Oh, yeah.
Congratulations.
Thank you so much.
Coming out. Good luck to you.
No, it's okay. I laugh. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
If you want to learn more. I didn't see any takers there. Thank you. Yeah. I didn't turn the mic on.
Okay, moving along to the next agenda item is presentation with prior notice, and that will be the annual comprehensive financial report by Joy Mariner from BDO USA PC. Welcome again.
I was a little nervous there. I'd have to present to a bunch of wrestling girls. They're tough. I have actually had the pleasure of being there at the tournament. I have wrestlers, boy wrestlers, but the ladies always just blow me away. And the Soldotna team just performed so beautifully. And I just have to say they just have really good sportswomanship as well. Not just off the mat and on the mat. They have that reputation. So great job to your girls, young women. So for those of you who have not met, my name's Joy Mariner. I serve as the lead audit partner on the engagement for your audit. And we have had a really successful audit season. I'm going to go through some highlights with you. I work out of a firm in Anchorage, but I've worked with your city for quite some time. And you should have two items available for our review. One is the annual comprehensive financial report. The other is our audit wrap-up, which was laid down today. You should have that. And I'll cover just a few highlights for you. As usual, you know, I tend to be the most boring presentation of your year, I hope. And that's always the goal. And as usual, the audit went very smoothly. We had no audit adjustments, no items that we found that weren't corrected, really none that were corrected because we didn't find anything that needed to be. The audit went very smoothly. The financial statement opinion is a clean opinion or an unmodified opinion. And we issued this before the holiday season hit. So, well, holidays anyway, was issued in December. It's been some time before we've been able to issue the statements that early. And it started kind of with earthquake, the state of Alaska PERS system, and then earthquake, and then we all rolled into COVID, and then it's been some time to just the amount of COVID funding that your team has had to kind of oversee over the past few years has been a lot. And then you've also received a significant amount of AIP money through infrastructure bills. So there's been a lot of things that have I would just say not normally, we haven't been able to issue as early. Melanie and her team were really on top of their close this year. We got in here right on time. Everything was ready as usual for us. And then she puts this entire financial report together. And she was able to do that a little earlier than she's had the capacity to do in the past. And so we were able to get through the audit in December, and it is submitted already to the Government Finance Officers Association. So let's cover a few highlights. I know I only get 15 minutes or so. In the audit wrap up, let's just quickly go through a couple highlights for you, starting on page 7. And, really, I always like to remind people that an audit is not a test of everything that happened at the city during the year. We do pick samples. And I apologize. Yes, that one. Page 7 is, and the page number is on the bottom right corner. There you go. So an audit is to obtain reasonable, not absolute assurance on the financials. So we pick samples. We cover areas that we consider to be higher risk. And we do follow professional standards. You actually have multiple audits because we audit your federal compliance as well as your regular financial statement audit, compliance with your federal awards as well. A couple key highlights here. Third bullet point, we issued an unmodified clean opinion, as I mentioned. We also issued an unmodified opinion on your federal single audit. That's your fifth bullet point. We did have one recommendation for changes on that, which we'll touch on in a moment. And then the last bullet point, records were available for inspection. We come down here with a team. A lot of information is even uploaded to us before we show up. And so, Melanie has everything kind of pulled, samples ready. We look through payroll. Some of your documentation is a little more sensitive in nature, like payroll. So we look at it in person here rather than getting copies. And your team's always been excellent to work with. So this is the first year in a while that we haven't had any new significant accounting rules to follow either. If you remember the last couple of years, we've had the leases, we had software-based changes and subscription liabilities, none this year that are very significant. There is one coming up just to be aware of related to compensated absences, specifically sick leave and how your time off policy is handled. So that's something that Melanie's going to have some fun with for the coming year. And so let's turn to page 9, if you could, to cut through just what we kind of have as our significant risks. We talk through these every year just to be aware of them. They didn't change. So our risks going into your audit, we planned for this, and we didn't identify any new risks as we went through your audit process. You have grants. Some of them are pretty large. And then this year, you also have the field house, which isn't specifically grants, although you did use some grant money to cover the field house. So we look pretty carefully at how grants are recognized. Are they eligible? Expenses being applied, those kinds of things. And then the other two really are very related. You have a small accounting staff for the volume of work that's done here. I say that pretty frequently. I want to make sure that you understand that you have a small team. So that means there's not a lot of segregation of duties. Maybe Jeanette has to look at several things because there's really only one person who's looking at that. Very strong controls over the money coming in the door and the money going out the door, and very strong controls over cash, because that's, from a risk perspective, we never want something to walk out the door that shouldn't. That being said, you do have the kind of risk of having a lot of responsibility resting in your finance director role, and Melanie is here, and she does an excellent job with the work that she does, but she does a lot not entirely on her own, I won't say, but a lot of the adjustments are her own. And so we look very carefully, we know about that coming in. And so our audit procedures are designed to look at specifically maybe more weighted towards the things that Melanie is involved in without as much oversight or as much approval. So just be aware of that. And we'll touch on really quickly, what does that mean from an internal control perspective? Because if you turn to 2 more pages, right there. We have to report to you anything we have that are internal control deficiencies. So we don't opine on your internal control, but we do come in and look at them. These are the checks and balances that make your city work. So for example, you wouldn't want a check going out the door without an authorized check signer signing it. Or you wouldn't want to have a contract be approved without enough people who are supposed to look at it approving that. So, Jeanette wouldn't sign a contract until it's been through the procurement process, for example. We do look at those controls to some degree. We make sure that they are implemented throughout the year in our test work. If we're testing an item, we also make sure that the controls were operating. This is the same as last year. You have two areas where you have a super user, where the finance director and the HR manager both have access to enter and post and approve their own journal entries in the system. And so there are some IT related access rights that the individuals have. This is very common among our client base. I'm not saying you need to change this. I just always, every year, want to make sure everybody's aware that you do have the ability to post entries in the system. And so, the big thing is that you just continue to review your journal entries. You have a back-end review process to compensate for that. So it's what we call compensating control. It's operating well. Just make sure if there's turnover that you're asking those questions as a council. And then the same thing with user access. Who has access in Cassell to those systems is probably worth having Jeanette maybe look at that once a year, who is actually in the system. Again, those changes are being done throughout the year, but having actually documented that somebody's looked at it can be a good best practice. Let's talk about internal control over compliance, because that was on your financial statements. This is for your grants. So the next page. The recommendation here is related to reporting. It's actually very similar. So your grant reporting for the ARPA grant was done correctly. It was done on time. There were no issues with your grant reporting. But from a control perspective, that was all done by Melanie, and she submitted it on time, and it was all done correctly. Those reports are discussed. The inputs are all approved, but the report itself, having another person just look at it before it gets submitted is, again, something that is a best practice. Unfortunately, for the ARPA grant, it's also required. And so the evidence of review or a signature outside of those meetings, we didn't have a signature for that report other than the person who submitted it. Now, it doesn't mean you're not compliant with the grant. You complied with all the grant requirements. And we're seeing this actually pretty frequently with ARPA testing, because we're now required to test for that one item on ARPA, which has caused us to have to report similar types of things all over the place as it relates to ARPA. So I just want to make sure everybody's aware that that is something that does get just reported as an item that the city should work on getting a second person to review your grant reports before they're submitted. So again, just a lot of responsibility being held in one person. I will say that your grant files are very comprehensive. They're available in paper and electronic, but the paper files have every single I dotted and T crossed, and they're available for review. And so you have a very good grant reporting system. Through all the CARES money and the AIP money that you've received and ARPA now, we haven't had any exceptions to compliance. And this is also not considered a compliance exception. It was not reported that way. So again, just recommendation that there's a second person involved as it relates to your grant reports, and especially when you get these weird grants. This one, ARPA, isn't something that is similar to AIP, that you don't have an airport person involved, or it really was just an appropriation by you as a city council. So it was approved in that respect, but the report itself just needs another set of eyes. Do you have any questions on that?
Vice Mayor Parker.
Thank you, Mayor Whitney. I had a couple questions. First one on page 11, when you were talking about the user access and review for Cassell. Who approves access to the Cassell system?
So if somebody is a new employee, HR would, direct, either the finance director or HR would add them to the system. And the same thing would happen, I believe, with termination. Is that correct, Melanie? Yep.
Okay, and then on, another question, on page 12, the reporting that you recommend that the review of the grant reports be reviewed by someone. Are you recommending someone outside the city review that?
No, just someone other than the person preparing the report.
Okay, thank you.
Could I add? We did, and we've talked to Joy about this
Yeah.
extensively. Actually, I did review grants, but we have no documentation proving it. So
Yeah.
we have already, we've put now where it's documented that it's been, yes. Yes. Thank you.
Yeah, if I know Melanie, everything's already been completely reviewed, so that's, yeah, so the frustrating part about this is we know it was discussed, we know it was looked at, there's not really a concern there, but the federal government wants some sort of signature or some sort of initial or a minutes that document that review.
And for the record, since the question was asked, should the federal government make the request, you can go back to the meeting minutes from this meeting to document that, yes, it was reviewed by people other than one individual within the city.
And again, this isn't reported as noncompliance. So on the federal filing, it doesn't get flagged as being noncompliant or having any issues with your ARPA funding. So we don't anticipate any issues there. I think it kind of speaks to, again, to having a small accounting staff handling a large volume. The last item I'll touch on is on page 14. I always just want to remind you all that there are some numbers in your financial statements that are estimates. We didn't have new standards adopted this year or anything like that, but there are a few things in your statements that are based on management's best guess of what the number should be. They aren't that complicated. The first one is just how much you have as uncollectible accounts. Generally speaking, your constituents pay their bills, so that's really good. You turn off somebody's water, they tend to pay their water bill. The second is depreciation of your capital assets. That's things like land, buildings. Well, land doesn't get depreciated, but buildings, machinery, equipment, soon to be your new field house. Those get depreciated based on estimated life. And then your pension assets and liabilities are estimated by the state of Alaska. You don't have any say in what those numbers are. They're evaluation done by an actuary at the state level. And then lastly, you do have some lease assets and liabilities that are discounted to present value using, right now that discount rate's at 5% based on your debt, equivalent debt rate. Otherwise, I want to touch base just really quickly on the financial statements and give you a few highlights. So if you can turn with me to the other document, which is your annual financial report. And I'm just going to start on the table of contents because I want to always remind you all of what's in here. I promise I'm only going to cover 2 actual pages of numbers in case you're worried. But, at a high level in the time that we have, let's see, I think it's just before that. Maybe like 5 more pages back. Keep going, almost there. 2 more. There you go. So there's some really good information in here that isn't really financial related. I'd really encourage you to read the transmittal letter. That's, the second document on here, because it gives an overview of who your city is. If you're, flying to DC and somebody asks you on a plane, well, what does Soldotna do? Well, you've got some talking points right here. And it also gives you a few key highlights of what's been happening in the city recently. Your certificate of achievement is after that. Every year you submit this report to a national entity. It's called the Government Finance Officers Association. And they do an evaluation as to whether your financial reporting is up to par. And every year you've received the certificate of achievement. And it really is a big lift, especially given that Melanie drafts these herself. A lot of our clients request us to draft them if they're looking to receive that certificate. And then there's officials, org charts, those kinds of things. The other main thing I just want to highlight for you is a management discussion and analysis, page 5 to 12. If you read nothing else, that provides some really good tables that show you prior year, current year. It shows you some trends and the why. So you can see, well, okay, investment income increased this year. Well, that makes sense given what the market was doing in 2024. Or you can see the changes in the sales taxes and a little bit more explanation, as well as things that happened with your debt, DEC loans, for example, or your new field house. So this is more of a narrative report. If you're someone who likes to read more words and fewer numbers, this is going to be where you want to live. And then I'll touch on really briefly on a couple financials, but at the end of the table of contents, on the third page of the table of contents, there's a statistical section. The financials themselves, there's combining information for all of your funds. If you really want to dive into the detail's here for you. You can do that. But the statistics also provide, in some cases, 10 years of data, so you can look at trends and historical information, see what's really been happening with our fund balance, say, over the last 10 years, or what's really been happening with our expenses by category over that time. So I just encourage you to look at this. It also provides you information about your highest employers or your ratios of debt, some demographic economic statistics, really good resource for you as a council member. So let's touch base on just a couple of key financial items. None of these numbers are surprising to you, I'm sure, because we had no audit adjustments. So you've seen these already recently. If you could turn to page 13, which is the statement of net position, it's the tab that says basic financial statements, if you're following along on paper. And the first thing I'll just say is the statement of net position, keep going just about 6 or 7 more pages. The statement of net position provides a summary at one point in time at the end of the fiscal year, which is June 30th, what you had in assets, and assets are things that you own, and liabilities are things you owe to others. What's left over is considered to be net position or equity. So total assets, if you could go forward just a few more pages online. Okay. It's okay. I know. Keep going. I'll let you know. Almost there. Just a few more. There you go. So total assets, these are things you own, the largest being your capital assets. Capital assets are things like your buildings, property, equipment. Big number this year, construction in progress, 9.5. Almost all of that is the field house. Pretty exciting. I got to go see it. They let me inside and toured around, and just a really great facility. I guess I had to make sure it was there because, all the money being spent on it and the bond and all of that. But also as a wrestling mom, I'm kind of excited about the field house. So, and it was fun to see some of the improvements on the other side of the house too, just that have been invested in. They were playing ice hockey while I was there. Other assets, large assets, are things like your cash and investments, which you have a certain amount that you hold for working capital, for investments ongoing for the city. You also do have some pension assets this year. So some of the state's pension system is actually in a positive situation right now. So about $4 million, 3.8. You can't spend that. You can't access it. You'll never have that money, but just know that that's there as well. On the liability side, things that you owe to others, total liability is about $24 million. Most of that's in your new bond, as well as your pension liability, which you cannot repay. So this looks different since the last few years. I think last year you did have the bond there, but when you look at the total amount of the bonds payable, really reflective of the activity happening at the field house. And we are monitoring that pretty closely with Melanie to make sure that you meet all of the tax exempt bond requirements, because that is very important when you issue bonds, to follow your debt covenants. And then if you could go 2 more pages to the total balance sheet, 3 more pages to page 17, which is the changes in fund balance for the year. 1 more. There you go. This is going to give you a picture instead of at one point in time of what you owned and owed. This is showing you over time, over the course of the whole year, what came in the door and what left the door at a very high level. And it breaks out for you by what we call major funds. So you can see the general fund separate from, say, public utilities, airport, and the field house. It gets its own capital project because it's so large. So your total expenditures in the general fund, 12 million, revenues of 13.5. You did have transfers out and these were budgeted. So in overall negative number in the general fund, but again, budgeted negative number. So a total of 3 million or so decrease in fund balance to 12.5. I do always want to point out total fund balance at 12.5 is just about a little more than 1 year of expenditures available in your general fund. And you do want some amount of buffer in order to meet your expenses, and sometimes the granting agencies don't pay you the same day. So it's important to have some amount of working capital. Public utilities, total revenue there of 2.7, expenditures of 2.5. I do not see this everywhere where your special revenue funds are generating enough in fees to cover the costs. So that's encouraging. Just know that that doesn't cover depreciation. And so because it's being reported in a governmental fund, it doesn't include the capital cost, really. You have some capital, $35,000 of capital outlay, but you're not covering the replacement cost of the system at this point. And then the last thing I'll mention on this page is just, you can see it pretty glaringly obvious. The field house is there, 3.5 million in capital outlay, and investment earnings from the proceeds of the bonds that will be evaluated for a return on arbitrage. That's something you're looking at. For an overall there, the field house will continue to be getting built. I'm excited to see the progress even since I was here before. And, overall, just, right in line with the budget, we do compare your budgets to actuals, what you approve, and especially on large purchases, we do go back to the council approval for those. So I'll just close by, and I'll open up for questions in a moment, but just thanking your team. Great audit this year. Melanie was calling me in June asking when she could start sending me things. And just, really glad to see that the bond issuance and the field house construction is going so well. I'm excited to get in there with my kids. My daughter plays soccer, so she'll be down here doing that, and the boys will be wrestling in there in no time. So we're excited for another facility like that in the state. And congratulations on that project. I'm sure that the community is happy about it. With that, I'm happy to answer any other questions you might have on the financials.
Mr. Carey?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As obviously you're aware, in this last couple of years, we've gone to a 2-year really rolling budget process. Does that create any added difficulties or hindrances to you doing your job?
No.
Thank you.
Mr. Joseph?
Just a question on the fiduciary fund, and I'm not sure it's directed towards your administration. We have a single fiduciary fund that serves two purposes, one of which is the Historical Society, the second which is scholarships. But because they're just lumped into one fund, does that mean we have the discretion to vary which portion of the earnings go to each purpose? Or do we have a way to track, okay, this amount of the equity in the fund is to serve the Historical Society, and this amount of equity in the fund is designed to serve scholarships, and we need to keep the earnings pouring out proportional to each purpose?
Melanie can correct me if I'm wrong on this, but knowing Melanie, and you actually are tracking all that very separately. You have the amount that's being allocated is still being tracked between all the activities, for the whole city. And the actual fiduciary fund information, they do get their own schedule, but GAAP kind of requires the fiduciary funds to be reported in one number, but they are being tracked separately.
Okay.
And I believe in their own fund, or at least in their own department within the fund. They have their own fund each? Okay, yeah. Yeah.
Got it. Okay, thank you.
In fact, that's something that if it's, something that would help the council, you do have the ability, if you wanted to break out the net position to show the different portions in the future.
Yeah, my follow-up was if there'd be any benefit in splitting those up into separate fiduciary funds, or if that's not really worth the the work for that.
Yeah, you can't really split them up on this page, but you
Okay.
could provide additional information or at least break out that net position into the two, if you
That
want
would
to.
probably be helpful for future iterations of this report, just to see where they stand.
Any other questions from the council? Seeing none, thank you very much. Good to see you again this year.
Yeah.
Good to see the report again as
Yeah.
well as it's done. And thank you, Melanie, for all the hard work.
Thank you, everyone.
Okay. Next up on the agenda is the Visitor Center Quarterly Report by Sarah Hundell, Tourism and Education Manager, the Soldotna Chamber of Commerce.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Council. It's my honor to be here tonight to represent the Soldotna Chamber of Commerce and to deliver our fourth quarter 2024 city update. For those of you that do not know me, I'm Sarah Hondell, Tourism and Education Manager at the Soldotna Chamber. I've been there for 10 years in my position, and I have an awesome team that I get to work with every day. I'd like to say that this is the first time our team has either been born or raised in Soldotna. So we do have ties to the city, and this is home, and we are proud to work on your behalf. I brought my coworkers with me. I have Sierra Vandahai. She is our membership and sales manager. And then we have Joe Spady, who is our communications and events manager.
Welcome.
The Soldotna Chamber concluded 2024 with a spectacular event. I hope you were able to join us for Christmas in the Park. It was very well attended. It helped that the weather was cooperative. We had a fireworks show on December 7th, concluding the year. The festivities included Victorian carolers, horse-drawn hay rides, which were very popular, and a visit from Santa and his reindeer, of course. At the end of the year, we had 481 Soldotna Chamber members, just a slight decrease of 1.43% from 2023. Our team is currently revamping our membership benefits, community partner offerings, and sponsorship opportunities to better serve both our members and the community. We facilitated a robust Soldotna marketing campaign throughout the year, including 24 community events, 16 membership events, and 8 ribbon-cutting ceremonies. The 30th annual pie auction, which was held October 19th and themed Into the Time Machine, raised $41.5 thousand to support our scholarship and our event programs. We also hosted our Spark Soldotna Shark Tank event in November, where we awarded a $4,000 business grant to Madly Crafty on top of our 5 annual Scholastic scholarships. Our online communication efforts have also evolved significantly. We now manage 4 Facebook pages, 3 Instagram pages, boasting 14,000 followers on our main page and a collective reach of over 1 million posts throughout the year. Our weekly e-newsletter, which highlights member events and offers, has seen an increase to reach to 1,855 subscribers, thanks to Mr. Joe Spady. That's an impressive 23.67% rise from last year. So we are getting the information about all of our community events and also events that our members have with the city of Soldotna, our job postings, et cetera, out to a large audience. These initiatives to support our business community would not be possible without our partnership with you all, the city of Soldotna. Your ongoing investment is crucial in fostering regional leadership that helps Soldotna businesses connect, grow, and thrive. Together, we are committed to building a prosperous community. On the next page, we have our visitor center and marketing. We had quite a few impressions on alaska.org to update our Soldotna pages going forward into 2025. We are working on updates for local dining, community, things to do and see, trip itineraries, and more for Soldotna. Our impressions over the last year were 23,561 across 30 pages. The page on alaska.org that received the most traffic was the Things to Do in Soldotna page. Visit soldotna.com, our own website. Our impressions for fourth quarter, 38,710. Soldotna advertising and marketing. Over the last year, we invested in the following advertisement companies to promote Soldotna: the Kenai Peninsula Best Map, Visit Anchorage Rec Guide, Alaska Campground Owners Association Map. New last year was that we put some money towards guest guides for the KOA campgrounds in Valdez, Tok, and Denali, the Milepost, Barefoot Alaska Guide, Bell's Alaska Travel Guide map, and the Alaska Channel. Also, last year was the first year that we had dropped the Sport Rec and Trade Show in Anchorage, and we moved to the Mat-Su for the Mat-Su Outdoorsman Show. And last year was also the second year in a row that we went to Fairbanks for their Fairbanks Outdoor Show. When we're in Fairbanks, our competition is Valdez, so we try to promote any travelers that are wanting to get out of the Fairbanks area to come see us instead of Valdez. So that's one of the things that we are excited that we're going to be attending in 2025 as well. Our Soldotna Visitor Guide distribution, we mailed 8,775 qualified leads. That's through our webpage. Also, we receive leads that are through Visit Anchorage that are catered to just Soldotna. We had approximately 13,000 guides put out into the Anchorage market, approximately 13,200 to visitor centers throughout Alaska and also locally. Last year was a record year for how many of our local businesses had guide racks in their entryways or in their storefronts. And we had over, I didn't put it on here, but we had over, I think it was 28 locations. So that was exciting. We had a lot of visitor guides get picked up this last summer. Soldotna relocation packets distributed in 2024. We had a total of 37 inquiries come through our website, but we also passed out 50 to those two trade shows I mentioned. Down below on the bottom of this page, you get a little preview of our 2025 Soldotna Visitor Guide cover. We are in the final stages of completing the visitor guide. We just had a meeting today, actually, with our graphic designer. This project has required significant attention to detail and time investment, highlighting its importance in representing our community effectively. Looking ahead, we are preparing to launch the guide during our Love Soldotna Social Mixer event, which will be held February 14th. This will mark a key moment to showcase the guide and engage our community and membership. It will be held at Odie's Deli, and it will be more of like a brunch, come as you go through lunch. I believe, Joe, it's from 10 to 2. Yeah. So you can find that on our community calendar. Visit soldotna.com. For social media, our Instagram followers, we did see an increase in the fourth quarter. Facebook, Visit Soldotna Facebook page, our total likes, we did see just a slight decrease, which we are down from 4 team members to 3. Small but mighty, as we like to say. But we, going into the new 2025 first quarter, we anticipate that Visit Soldotna Facebook page bumping back up where it should be. Our Soldotna Chamber page has kept momentum, however, because of all the fabulous events that we put on in the fourth quarter. We had an increase of 139 new likes, which congratulations, Joe. Again, he worked hard on that. Our website, we have observed a slight decline in new visitors arriving at visitsoldotna.com from organic search results and direct traffic. In contrast, referrals have increased, possibly due to the growing interest in AI-related topics this year compared to last. Overall, the total number of views on our website has decreased since last year. Given that we have not made any major changes, this likely indicates a decline in traffic from organic searches. But to improve our organic searches going into 2025, we plan to identify relevant keywords and phrases that potential visitors are searching for. We will then optimize individual pages on our site by incorporating these target keywords in key areas such as titles, headings, meta descriptions, and within the content itself. And we'll work with our web developer for those changes. One of our fun little events that we held in fourth quarter was to promote Shop Local. So I don't know if you follow our hashtag Elfing Around Soldotna on Facebook and Instagram, but we have a mischievous chamber elf that gets passed around to different businesses. And for this last holiday season, 13 chamber members spread Christmas cheer and shenanigans with our little elf. It's a lot of fun just seeing how our chamber members' businesses get creative. On our last page, we talk about events. We just celebrated the Chamber's 65th annual awards celebration on December 18th. It was an honor to recognize the people who make Soldotna a wonderful place to live and do business. I think this was an impressive year. We had a total of 12 awards. 2 of them were brand new. New was Young Professional of the Year and People's Choice. So also new for our awards was beginning in about, I think it was midway January 2024. Joe had put on our social media pages and our website advertising that we would open up the nominations all year round instead of just waiting for like the couple of months before the event itself. And so through that, that's how our People's Choice winner gets decided. It's more bangs for your buck, basically. A lot of community members voted for them. So it's basically a popular vote. So Siam Noodles and Food won. Our rest of our awards, except for the President's Award, were nominations, and then it goes to our staff and our selection committee, which is mostly our board members that come up with those awardees. So our President's Award was Lacey Kelly from Kenai Peninsula Racing Lions. Commitment to Customer Service was Soldotna Sit and Stay. Government and Civic Affairs was Mr. Jordan Chilson. Congratulations again. Excellence in Profession, Renee Ryback from Global USA. Dan Genzel, Commitment to Youth, was Neela Sanchez from Yo Tacos. Our Pioneer Award was the Triumvirate Theater. Volunteer of the Year, John Mellish with Twin City Raceway. Small Business of the Year, this was a unique one since we had a change in ownership of a small business, Fine Time Cafe. Person of the Year was Joe Gilman, Kenai River Brewing, and Kenai Joe's Tap House. And then Young Professional of the Year were professionals, Mallory and Morgan Musgrove, Property Sisters of Century 21 Realty Solutions. And then our overall Chamber Business of the Year was Peninsula Community Health Services. We were very excited for that slate this year. Our Soldotna Pie Auction, thanks to the generosity of over 15 dessert chefs, 20 volunteers, 265 attendees, and over 100 businesses and individuals who donated cash, goods, and services. Our 30th annual pie auction, Into the Time Machine, was a tremendous success. Again, proceeds from pie auction support all of our community events and also our scholarship programs in its entirety. which this year $10,000 is what we gave out in scholarship/education grants. One of those education grants, of course, is our Spark Soldotna education grant. During the Alaska Startup Week, that brings entrepreneurs, small business owners, and local leaders together during 1 week to build momentum around Alaska's entrepreneurial opportunities. In conjunction, the Chamber hosted our Shark Tank event at Lone Moose Lodge, November 9th. Our Chamber Sharks reviewed applications leading up to the event, inviting 3 entrepreneurs to give live presentations. If you've never been to that event, I encourage you to attend in the new year. It is a lot of fun. Also, if you're ever interested in being on our selection committee going forward, moving finalists into that live round, let us know. Each finalist was awarded a year of membership with Soldotna Chamber. Soldotna Sit and Stay was voted People's Choice by our audience, and they won an Amazon Fire tablet, and ultimately Madly Crafty was awarded the $4,000 business grant. And then we had concluded, of course, Christmas in the Park, as I had mentioned earlier. At the very bottom of the page is our Soldotna Visitor Center expenses for fourth quarter 2024. If you look at the year-to-date compared to what was budgeted, we worked with Breck, our bookkeeper, on trying to get this most accurate, up-to-date for y'all to look at. Is there any questions that I might be able to answer?
Any questions from the council? Ms. Hutchings?
Well, I do want to thank you, Sarah. And I'm excited about your scholarship fair coming up. I think that's going to be great. And I know we spoke about that today, so hopefully we'll have even more scholarships. And the next thing I want to know is, what is the date of Soldotna Progress Days?
Soldotna Progress Days is always held the fourth Saturday in July, but
July 26th. Okay.
Hot dog
I
day.
have people already calling. So
that is
Calendar right
awesome.
now while I'm thinking of it.
And thank you, Linda.
Okay.
We're excited about our community scholarship fair that is going to be held next Saturday, January 18th.
Mr. Chilson?
Oh, I just want to say I went to Christmas in the Park with the family again this year, and my son, as always, loved the reindeer and the fireworks. And I think the team did a phenomenal job putting that together. It's always very well done. So thank you for all the efforts in that. And also just want to say great report. And it's a nice change seeing the entire chamber team here to represent and present on the ongoings of the chamber. So keep up the great work.
Thank you, Jordan.
Vice Mayor Parker?
Thank you, Mayor Whitney. Thank you, Sarah, and your team for all that you do. You mentioned February 14th is Love Soldotna event. Where and what time is
Yep.
that?
So it'll be 10 to 2 p.m. and it'll be held at Odie's Deli. And it's a social mixer, so you don't have to stay for the whole time unless you want to hang out with us. We're pretty fun, but it's a come and go, and there will be refreshments.
Okay. And then if I can, Mayor Whitney, I see you'd focus on Facebook and Instagram for social media. Have you chatted with other chambers to see what social media they use? Because I know there's so many out there these days, and I don't, is
Are you
this the
referencing
preferred, or are
TikTok?
there others that we should be looking at?
We haven't directly reached out to other chambers yet. We do know that Facebook and Instagram are still popularly used throughout the state and nationally. We do know that there are some creative chambers out there that have been doing more like reels or TikTok type videos on their Instagram. We'll see how creative we are going into the new year, because video does do better than just stagnant like photo shares and things like that. So we'll try to work at that, increasing and expanding upon our social media creativity going into the new year.
Anything else from the council? I have one quick question. What is and where are Madly Crafty?
So Madly Crafty is actually located in the city of Kenai. If you know where Arby's is located, there are like two strip malls that are perpendicular. They're in the strip mall that is directly parallel to the Kenai Arby's, like across the parking lot. And what Madly Crafty does is they have a lot of digital designs, like they can etch onto wood different products. Like if you had a logo, you could go to them and they can do one-off prints, or they can put your logo on actually metal. Can you guys? A lot of different swag for your business. Yeah. Yes.
Okay. All right, thank you.
I bought
thank-
some earrings there before Christmas that were really cool.
Thank you very much for your report and congratulations on the new year and good luck.
Thank you very much. Have a good evening. Happy New Year.
Moving on to the next item on the agenda is public comments and presentations. Items other than those appearing on the agenda. Are there any members of the public who would like to speak on any item not appearing on the agenda? Anyone here in the chambers wishing to speak on any item not on the agenda? Seeing none, we'll take a look at Zoom, and we have no hands raised there. Moving on to the next item on the agenda is Assembly and Legislative Reports. Are there any representatives from the borough and or the state legislature that would like to address the council? I see no one here in the chambers, and looking at Zoom, no one there. Moving on to the next item on the agenda is public hearings. Number 7, ordinances, ordinance 2024-040, amending Soldotna Municipal Code 2.50.030, Parks and Recreation Advisory Board to address membership and meeting frequencies, introduced by the city manager. May I have a motion to enact? Vice Mayor Parker.
Thank you, Mayor Whitney. I would move to enact ordinance 2024-040.
May I have a second, please? Thank you, Mr. Carey. Well, report from the city manager.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Our Parks and Recreation Director is here this evening and will report on this item.
How's everybody doing? So you can see in the packet, the memo, the November meeting for the Parks and Rec Advisory Board, they voted to make some changes to the advisory board. The two major areas is the number of seats that are open to people that live outside of the city limits. Originally, it was 1 seat. A couple years ago, we changed it to 2. That was really successful. We're looking at changing it to 3 seats. We serve, obviously, the Parks and Rec facilities serve a much larger population than just city limit residents. And so it's nice to have a variety of board members that represent all different user groups. And then the other one is we had a number of years ago changed our quarterly meetings to every other month. And we would like to change that back to quarterly to better align with other boards and commissions. So the expectations are similar across all volunteer efforts, and then also frees up staff to be a little bit more creative and have a little bit more time in between the meetings to prepare a quality meeting. The one area that we did not change was the number of seats. We have 7 on the Parks and Rec Advisory Board versus 5 on most of the other commissions. We just like to have a larger variety. We feel like, when you're talking about hockey and field house and parks and markets, it's helpful to have a bigger pool of talent and expertise on that board. So we did not change the number of seats on that. That's the short version, but I'm here for any questions.
Thank you. Let's see, are there any members of the public who wish to speak on this ordinance 2024-040? Seeing no one here in the audience, and I see no hands raised on Zoom. Having no one wishing to speak, the item is back before the council. Are there any council comments? Vice Mayor Parker.
Quick question. reducing the meetings to just quarterly, should there be a need for the Parks and Rec Advisory Committee to meet in between? Can they call a special meeting? Is that within their ability?
Correct. Yeah, having it every other month kind of hampered the ability to call special meetings or work sessions or site visits. And so this would give us a little bit more flexibility to add something special if needed, especially right now with the field house. We might need to get a couple extra meetings in there. So we still have the flexibility to add if needed.
Any other questions from the council? Seeing none, there are any objections to approving ordinance 2024-040? Seeing no objections, the ordinance 2024-040 is approved. Moving on to the next item on the agenda is ordinance 2024-041, amending the official zoning map to rezone certain lots of Soldotna Junction Subdivision, addition number 24, to limited commercial district and multifamily residential district, introduced by the city manager. May I have a motion to enact?
I'll move to
Joe.
enact ordinance 2024-041.
May I have a second, please? Thank you, Mr. Nelson. A report from the city manager.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Our economic development and, economic development and planning director is here to speak to this item this evening.
Thank you. I'm gonna let Johnny pull up a presentation slide for this. Perfect. We'll go ahead and jump to the next slide. So this ordinance is a petition to rezone 2 parcels. Here you can see the outline of the 2 areas. There's a large, yes. Awesome, thank you. So this petition is to rezone 2 parcels. The larger is Track A, and the smaller lot is Lot 8A of Soldotna Junction Subdivision, addition number 23. So the overall lot of Track A right now is approximately 21 acres, and the smaller lot is approximately half an acre. Majority of the parcel is zoned commercial, with the smaller lot being zoned multifamily as it stands today. And then I'm going to go ahead and jump to the next slide. So just giving you a visual of the existing zoning versus the proposed. So surrounding zoning to these lots is multifamily, single family, 2-family. To the west and to the north, you have rural residential and a portion of commercial along the Sterling. And then to the south, you have commercial zoning. As well as to the west, you have that church, which is zoned institutional. What's being proposed is rezoning certain lots within a new preliminary plat known as Soldotna Junction Subdivision, addition number 24. And what's highlighted in the proposed zoning is only the lots that is being requested to be rezoned. So as you can see, Lot 5, the proposed lots 5 through 11 plus the Track A-1 will be rezoned to limited commercial. And then a portion of the larger Track A, as you can see, proposed Lot 12 will be rezoned from commercial to multifamily. As well as Lot 5 right now is multifamily, and that will now be multifamily to limited commercial. I know it's a lot, so this is why I did a side-by-side so you can see the difference. So with the overall rezone, the biggest difference here is the overall lot is commercial. Zoning it from commercial to limited commercial is ultimately downzoning, meaning less intensive use. because a lot of commercial, in the commercial use, you can have a lot of higher impact use. Within limited commercial, a lot of the uses are limited to a square footage building of 1,300 square feet, as well as certain uses are prohibited in limited commercial, whereas in the commercial zone, you can have it. A majority of this track A is vacant with the exception of lot 12, which is being proposed to rezone to multifamily, has a multifamily building there. Otherwise, everything else within this rezone is vacant. So then within lot 5, where it's currently multifamily, it's being rezoned to limited commercial, which means it's upzoning. You're having a little bit more intensive use because in a residential, you're not allowed to have commercial uses unless approved through a conditional use. So that is a consideration to recognize that for that particular lot, from multifamily to limited commercial, they're going to be allowed certain uses that they wouldn't have otherwise under the current zoning. Why it's being proposed the way it is with lot 12, staff recommended working with the applicant that lot 12 with the existing multifamily building, it was more appropriate with the rezone to go ahead and rezone it multifamily because that's the existing use. And that would be consistent with the adjacent property to the west as well as the property to the north that are currently multifamily. So that kind of creates a consistency within that area off Foothill. And then furthermore, lot 5 being limited commercial, it is very similar to a multifamily residential. The intent of the zoning district acts like a buffer. Around this overall area, you do see commercial adjacent to multifamily and sometimes single and two family. So that's the overall view of the rezone. I'll go ahead and jump to the next one. So what is also being proposed as part of the preliminary plat is that it's going to be a phased preliminary plat. And what that also means with the preliminary phase plat, that the zoning would also have to be phased as well to correspond accordingly. So what that means is as each preliminary plat is recorded, that will then trigger the rezone if approved. So in this case, with the first phase, it is to rezone lots 5 and 6. So this is on the phase, the left image. The orange area, the 2 lots will be rezoned to limited commercial in phase 1. And again, this rezone would only become effective once the phase 1 preliminary plat is recorded. And that's noted in the conditions of this ordinance. And then phase 2 would rezone the remaining lots. So in this case, your lot 7 through 11 plus track A1 would then become limited commercial. And then your lot 12 will become multifamily residential. So I would leave it there. I would point out a few things within the phase 1 preliminary plat just because it's identified that within the phase 1 plat, the right-of-way dedication will be part of that, as well as something not shown here, but is part of the resolution with planning and zoning, is the easement running from Foothill Drive to that cul-de-sac would be dedicated in phase 1. So I just wanted to point that out since it's not shown there. And I'm going to go ahead now, my apologies, jump to the next screen. When it comes to the comprehensive plan in the future land use map specifically, the land classification of that area is primarily commercial. And I wrote the copy verbatim from the plan itself of the intent of the commercial when it comes to land use classification, as well as the multifamily. So the existing lot 8A is multifamily, and the land use designation map shows it's multifamily. Again, it does not have to match identical. Typically during intent is these 2 zones are typically a buffer in a transition from a high impact to a low impact. So typically from commercial to your lower density commercial, multifamily and limited commercial acts in that way. And so the rezone of majority of the lots to limited commercial are consistent with the commercial. If anything, it's lower density or lower intensive use than what it currently is zoned. With the exception of the multifamily land use designation, now that portion will become limited commercial. That's the only disconnect that's being proposed when compared to the future land use map. So I wanted to point that out, as well as the rezone of track A1. That would be limited commercial. That would be the only portion along the Sterling corridor that would have limited commercial with frontage off the Sterling. So looking at collectively as a whole through the zoning map, that would be the only disconnect. But That's not to say within the city, we do have other zoning districts off Sterling, such as institutional, parks and rec. And there is a small portion of Sterling to the east that has rural residential fronting Sterling. So I wanted to point out all these things from a wide view of the city, as well as honing down on the specifics of this rezone request. And I'll go ahead and jump to the next slide. So Planning and Zoning Commission met on December 4th, and they adopted Resolution PZ 2024-016, recommending that your city council approve this rezone subject to these conditions. In particular, again, just aligning that the rezone will come into effect, aligning with the recording of the final plat. And as staff, we recommended the Planning and Zoning Commission incorporate a timeline of when these plats need to be recorded, because I don't want a rezone that's approved today and 10 years later it's waited until to be rezoned. 10 years from now, it may look different. So it kind of gives that time frame. And of course, there's a caveat to allow an extension request depending on your city council approval. And that pretty much summarizes the rezone petition. And I'm happy to answer any questions your council may have.
Thank you. Before we move on here, Councilmember Hutchings, I understand you're going to declare a conflict.
Yes, I'll be recusing myself since it is the family trust that owns this property.
And we will agree with that. Moving on, are there any members of the public who wish to speak on this item, which is ordinance 2024-041? Anyone here in the audience wishing to speak on it? Seeing none, we'll take a look at Zoom, and I see no hands raised there. Having no one else who wishes to speak, the item is back before the council. Are there any council comments? Okay, we'll call for the roll on this one.
Parker,
Yes.
Nelson,
Yes.
Wackler,
Yes.
Chilson,
Yes.
Carrie,
Yes.
Kincaid.
Yes.
You have 5 yes votes.
Ordinance 2024-041 passes on a 5-0 vote with one conflict. Moving on to the next item on the agenda, new business, and we covered all of those under the consent agenda. We'll move along to the next item on the agenda. Number 9 is mayor and council reports. On December the 28th, I had the opportunity to attend a event sponsored by the Kenai and Soldotna Chamber of Commerce at the cannery for two-time Olympic gold medal winner Kristen Faulkner from Homer. Issued a proclamation at that time declaring December 28th, 2024 as Kristen Faulkner Day here in the city of Soldotna. And the other comment I have is I am glad to see that there's someone else on this council, won't mention names right now, who has the same problem I have in pronouncing names on some of these resolutions. So congratulations, you're into a select group of people now. And we'll move on to the city manager's report. Oh, excuse me. There's no council reports on boards and commissions. We're Go
Thank
ahead.
you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The only item I had this evening first is to thank you for passing the legislative priorities resolution. It will now be transmitted to both state and federal legislators as well as our state and federal lobbyists. Last year's legislative guide, as you're familiar with, looked like this. It'll be very similar for 2025 with the priorities that you adopted. As you know, we really focus on strategic projects and strategic regional projects for our area, because we know that much like Parks and Rec, we serve outside the city and for the benefit of the residents in the Kenai Peninsula and those who come in and use our services as well. So that process has continued. In this guide this year, we're doing something a little bit different, and that is we're going to include a couple of pages regarding the riverfront redevelopment project. We don't have a project identified within the project that we could ask for funding. We're not at that point yet. We're still working on that. Hope to have that for next year. We will have solid projects or even before that, identified for funding. However, we want to keep telling the story of this project that we're working on it and it is moving along. So we're adding 2 pages to be determined what they'll say at this time. We're working on that within this guide that will also go to all of the legislators. Whenever we speak to our legislators, we get asked about the project. So that's why we're going to keep it in front of our legislators, as well as others who read this guide. And we do receive a lot of feedback about the guide. So that's all I have this evening. Just an update on the guide.
Any questions for the city manager? Saying none, we'll move on to the next item on the agenda is public comments. Members of the public will have 3 minutes to comment. Is there anyone from the public who wishes to comment? Anyone here in the audience? Seeing none, we'll move on to Zoom, and I see no hands raised there. Next item on the agenda is council comments, and we will start with Ms. Wackler.
I have no comments today. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Kincaid.
Hi. Well, to start off, obviously we wrapped up our wrestling season well with our state championship winners, specifically our girls team rocking it. We have other sports that are getting running, like our basketball, girls and boys team are both traveling to different games and tournaments, with our girls team traveling to Juneau and Ketchikan, and our boys to Palmer. We have hockey. I'm not exactly sure what's going on with them, but I know that they're having fun and having a blast with their different games. We also have cross-country skiing, which has had some troubles with the snow and with the weather, but they've been going to Homer and going to different places despite all the ice. Other than sports going on at our school, we have a country barn dance coming up where we like to swing dance, especially after learning at the end of the semester together. And our student council likes to run a little sweethearts dance for our elementary school students around the area. And so if you guys have any children that would like to go, then we will start to advertise that soon. And I know I mentioned our toy drive back in December, and I know that went well. And we have some leftovers that we'll be using this next year. That's all that I have.
Thank you. Ms. Hutchings.
Happy New Year, and that's all I've got. Thanks.
Mr. Nelson.
Just a compliment. I know Melanie left us, but going through these audits and doing all that, being somebody who is not an accountant, nor do I wish to be, I do not want to go through that level of detail, and compliments to everybody that does that to get a very uneventful report every time those auditors come by. So my appreciation to everybody who contributes to that. That's all I've got.
Mr. Carey.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to note again how very pleased I was to see that the Social Security Fairness Act was approved by an overwhelming margin by both houses of Congress. Alaska was the state with the highest amount of individuals being penalized, 12% offset and then 14% in terms of the windfall. And so of all the states, there were more people in Alaska who were denied full benefits they had paid for in Social Security than in any other state. And so as both our members of the Senate spoke about this, it's 25,000 Alaskans have been penalized. This went into effect in 1983. And so again, for 40-some years, they've been penalized. And so again, this is very nice. I've been real pleased with our congressional delegation in terms of they've been in contact with me, just to keep me up to date. There will be a one-time lump sum payment for anyone who received reduced benefits during 2024. And so the legislation itself said they must make up for anything after December 31st of 23. And so for all of 2024, they will go back, and the amount that was offset, the amount that was penalized from each of their checks during each of those 12 months. Obviously, that's for those who were collecting it during that time. They do not yet know when that will happen. It should not be a particularly difficult thing, but electronically it has to be done. And obviously, there's a change of administration. And so it was nice. The president did sign it one day early because of the huge storm that was going through the nation, and particularly the Mid-Atlantic states. And so the big ceremony they were to have, again, we go Monday, they moved it to Sunday, just so that people could get in and out of Washington DC for it. And so again, this is very significant in terms of our ability to hire and retain people who work for the state, for the borough, for the city. Again, this is very significant that now we'll be on an equal playing field. You will not be penalized for working for government in Alaska if you get vested and you take retirement. So it's just very nice to see this happening. Again, they don't know yet when the new numbers will go into effect, and so that I'm saying hopefully by June. I've got some optimists saying, oh, by February, I'm sure by next month they'll have everything in place. I think 5 or 6 months might be more realistic, but they don't know yet themselves. And so this was a major thing. Our United States Senator took a very major lead in this. And again, I spoke to her here in this room 20 years ago. She met, and again, many of us did, to specifically speak about that. And at that time, she said, yes, she was a co-signer to have the penalty done away with. But she also said it'll never happen. That even though at that time, there were 52 co-sponsors, she said it'll never get out of committee because it would cost too much. And so it's been a very long effort. A lot of people worked on this. This is very significant that we will no longer be one of the 18 states in the nation that are penalized if you work for the government in one of those states and take a state retirement. So I was very pleased to see this happening.
Vice Mayor Parker. I think that was a nothing. Okay, Mr. Chilson.
No comments.
Okay, well, I'll get the last word. I forgot to say it earlier, but thank the staff, our staff, the City of Soldotna staff, especially the Finance Department for the terrific job they did on the financial report, and to all the staff in the city who do an absolutely outstanding job. Someone mentioned to me the other day that how much better the City of Soldotna maintains and removes snow and plows snow and does the streets than the other town that's just down the road a ways. So moving on, we are at executive session, and there is none scheduled for tonight. Meeting announcements, January 9th, 2025, Parks and Recreation Advisory Board meeting, 5:30 p.m. The Library Advisory Board meeting of January 20th has been canceled. And then January 26th, 2025, City Council meeting at 6 p.m. Seeing nothing more on our agenda, we are adjourned.